What is up, everybody? So I want to go through some questions you guys asked me last week about the Packers. Many different topics: draft, veteran, receivers, many other things you guys asked me. I'll try to get as many as possible. I asked about 5 days ago for you guys to drop your questions down below. I think we got 40 questions. I'm not sure how many I'll get to in this video, but I'll try to get to as many as possible as I quickly go through these comments and give my quick thought on lots of these questions. I may not go as in depth, but I want to try to go through some of these questions. So first off, I'm going to read down the list. From Joe, do you think the Packers will add another veteran defensive lineman? I think that is likely that sometime maybe in May, June, or July that Brian Gutekunst comes in and makes some cheap veteran signings, as we've seen him do in years past. Devondre Campbell a couple years ago came in. I think it was like a $2 million deal because he was being very overlooked. I think that Brian Gutekunst will do that. I think defensive line could make sense. I do think we're a little lacking there in depth after losing Jaron Reed, Dean Lowry. I do think that means young guys like Devontae Wyatt and TJ Slayton will get some more opportunity this year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him come in, maybe snag one, veteran, cheap defensive lineman. I could see it happening. Next, we got the great Sambino. What defensive players do you think the Packers should take in either the draft or following the draft? Personally, I'd take Jack Campbell from Iowa. Thank you for the question. So, when it comes to the Packers, I haven't looked much out of side of the first round, maybe a little bit, but I've mainly been focused on the first round. But when it comes to 15, some different guys that could make sense. I do think the edge is a big need for the Packers. Rashawn Gary coming off his ACL tear. Preston Smith still solid, but at 30 years old. And I think considering too, in the NFL, edge rushers switch in and out a ton these days. If your third edge rusher will play a good amount of snaps. So I think edge could make lots of sense at 15, and some of the guys who I think would be solid there, depending on who falls there. Let's see. Nolan Smith is a good option from Georgia, 238 pounds, 6'2". I'm just looking at the list of all these draft prospects right now. But also Lucas Van Ness, if he happens to be available at that spot, he seems super athletic. Seems like he could be solid there as well. A few other guys. I don't feel like cornerback makes much sense, but who knows? That could mean the Packers actually do that, but I don't think cornerback makes much sense. Other defenders, Brian Branch, it seemed at least, looking at the draft landscape, that Branch was more highly rated a few months ago. I'm definitely not like a scout. I'm not a scout, but I like to read what people are saying. And for whatever reason, Branch has sort of dropped down the board, and I think at 15, maybe it's too high, but sort of depends on your own, personal opinion. Brian Breesy, I think is how you say his name, defensive tackle. He could be available there at 15. I do think defensive line interior is also a need. So I think edge and D-line could make sense. But there are lots of other potential scenarios there. Yeah, Lucas Van Ness, I already said. But yeah, those are just a few. And I'll try to go more in depth as we get closer to the draft, which is not that far away now. Okay. Troy says, where do you think the strength of the draft is? Therefore, do you think the Packers are likely to trade up or down? In Brian Gutekunst's, in one of his interviews in the past few weeks, he mentioned, tight end being a very deep class, and I've heard many other people say that. Part of that makes me wonder if it's so deep, would the Packers be willing to say, you know what, let's just not draft one in the first round, see who falls to us in round 2, and, take the value there. Another option is to take a tight end at 15, which I wouldn't be opposed. After seeing the combine, Darnell Washington, he's 6'6" or 6'7", like 200. He's huge, and he's a very athletically gifted man. I think he has a super high RAS score as well, and he ran his 40 faster than I think Michael Mayer did. And so at first, a couple months ago, I was sort of liking Michael Mayer more, but now after seeing, the testing of Darnell Washington, the fact that he could already come in and block really well, I think he can make lots of sense. Yeah, 6'7", 264 pounds, ran a 4.64 40. So that's insane. I mean, that kind of speed for a guy that size, and considering, the Packers likely not bringing back Mercedes Lewis, Washington could come in and block right away. So I think there's lots of upside there. That can make sense. What was the question again? The strength. Yeah, tight end I think is a strength. I think that edge probably as well. We'll see if, as I already said, one of those guys falls there. Okay, so next question. Having so many young receivers, do you think the Pack may look to try to add a veteran receiver through a trade or free agency? I think that is possible. I heard Matt LaFleur say in the past couple of weeks that the Packers may want to add one, a veteran receiver. After losing Lazard and Randall Cobb, most likely not coming back. The Packers do have a very, very young receiver core. One guy I made a video on recently that I think makes lots of sense is Jarvis Landry. He's had some injury concerns and issues but that would make him a little bit cheaper. I think to bring him in, could play the slot role. That could make lots of sense. But I think just to give Jordan Love as many weapons as possible in his first few years is crucial, just so that way he has the best opportunity to succeed. We already have some solid weapons, Watson, Romeo Doubs, and maybe even round 1 or 2 we take, as I said, tight end. Maybe even a receiver. I know many Packers fans have been wanting, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we could potentially move up for. I don't know if I want to move up. I don't know if he'll still be there at 15. That's another option. But there's lots of other receivers who could be available in round 2. Rashee Rice, a few other guys as well. But now let me move on to. But yeah, I think we'll definitely add some more receivers to the draft and free agency. I think both could potentially happen. Trade, I don't know if the Packers are in the mood to trade for any receiver. I feel like they never are. Now we have this. Will we ever see a rebuild in the front office? Hopefully not, because if we don't, that means the Packers are doing well. But I think Mark Murphy is going to retire in a few years. I think there's like a maximum age you can be, and I think he's going to hit that age in 2025, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But I think when it comes to these next few seasons, let's say, I don't think like Brian Gutekunst's job is on the line in 2023, but maybe in 2024, if things don't go well, maybe things could change. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see when we get there. But I think the Packers will have a few years before I think there'd be any kind of change in the front office. Let's see here. Which tight end would you like to see the Packers take in the draft, and will they? Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit, but Darnell Washington could potentially be a good option. Kincaid also as well could be a good option. Seems like a very solid receiver threat, which maybe not as good a blocker as like Darnell Washington, but could make it in the receiving game. Yeah, there's good options, but I really do like Darnell Washington a lot. I don't know if he'd be available in round 2 though. So the Packers may have to. I guess they could trade back in round 1 and maybe take him, but who knows? There could be lots of teams who may want to take him there. 15, could it be too early? Maybe, but I wouldn't be mad if they did it, honestly. Let's see. Scrolling through some because some of these are repeated questions. From Dalton, what are you hoping Jordan Love becomes? An elite thrower, a strong runner, a mixture of both? A mixture of both would be great. I'd say first off, hopefully he's an elite thrower, but he does. We've seen like the athleticism he has. I was watching some random clip of Jordan Love in the Chiefs game a couple of years ago, and he has some ability to escape the pocket, which I feel like is probably underrated right now. And so hopefully he can be the best of all things, but he seems to. I mean, last year we saw him take steps forward in the Eagles game, throwing on time. His footwork looks better. Hopefully he can be obviously everything. But first off, I'd choose, if I had to choose between elite thrower and strong runner for my QB, I'd choose elite thrower. Let's see. Do I think Rodgers is actually getting traded? Yes, I do. Obviously the trade hasn't happened yet, but I would assume it happens soon. I mean, I sort of hope it happens soon to see what capital we get, but if Brian Gutekunst doesn't get great capital in return, or the Jets are like offering a 3rd-round pick, then I'd be completely fine saying, you know what, we'll move past the draft, we'll hold on to Rodgers and wait for you to give us some compensation that is really worthwhile. But it seems like right now they're just sort of probably discussing trade compensation, and maybe it happens by the draft. I know I heard Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated say he thinks it'll happen by the draft, but that would be nice if we could get it all done by then to sort of move on, have Love be leading the room, and he will, I think, regardless, but it would be easier just to move on for both sides. So hopefully they can come to an agreement sometime soon. Let's see. Who do you want the backup to Jordan Love to be? We do have Danny Etling on this roster still. I would assume I honestly think the Packers will draft a QB. I made a video on that a couple weeks ago. Back in 2008 when Rodgers took over for Brett Favre, we drafted Brian Braum in the 2nd and Matt Flynn in the 7th. So drafted 2 QBs when Rodgers came to start. So I would not be surprised to see the Packers draft at least 1 QB. Maybe Stetson Bennett in like the 4th or 5th rounds. Or there are some veteran QB options out there. Maybe you could do that for a backup. How many years do I think it'll take for Jordan Love to win a Super Bowl? Hopefully 1. Hopefully before his first year is complete, we win. Hopefully 2023 we come in. That's what I hope. Will that happen? Probably not, but that's what I hope. If not year 1, hopefully in his first 4 seasons. Hopefully that could happen. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I'm going to go through now. Maybe I'll answer some more later, but I just wanted to touch on some of those. So I appreciate you guys who did ask the questions. And as the draft gets closer, I'll try to get some more draft content out as I dive deeper. And feel free to comment your thoughts because I know you guys have lots of valuable information from what you read and see, so feel free to comment that as well. But that is all I have for this video, and I'll see you guys next time.